Delegates, you're invited to take your seats. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. We are resuming this session of the Working Group 2. This morning we made great progress. We have 4 items left on our agenda, and they're under the Nagoya Protocol. We will consider items NP5, 11, 15, and 16. Let us start with item 5 of the Nagoya Protocol, Report of the Compliance Committee. As you recall, the Compliance Committee on the Nagoya Protocol held its 3rd meeting in April 2020. The report of this meeting was introduced in the plenary by the chair of the Compliance Committee. The draft decision for this agenda item was prepared on the basis of the recommendations made by the Compliance Committee at its 3rd meeting and is also reproduced in the compilation of draft decisions in document MOP/4/1/add5. As this is the first time the committee's recommendations are being considered by an intergovernmental body, we will have a first reading of this item. I will now open the floor for your interventions. I will give priority in the list of speakers to parties in the Nagoya Protocol. The floor is now open for interventions. I will take the first intervention from European Union, followed by the UK, then Argentina. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am speaking on behalf of the European Union and its member states. The EU and its member states take note of the report of the Compliance Committee at its 3rd meeting and its findings on general issues of compliance. The EU and its member states note with regret the slow progress in fulfilling the obligations as identified by the Compliance Committee, namely in putting in place appropriate measures, designating checkpoints, and making information available in the Access and Benefit Sharing Clearinghouse. While acknowledging the need for continuous efforts to fully implement the Nagoya Protocol, the EU and its member states stress the urgency to improve its effectiveness and efficiency, including where relevant through the development of standardized and simplified access and benefit sharing measures, including to promote and facilitate research that contributes to conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, and more broadly to the objectives of the future global biodiversity framework. The EU and its member states also recognize the key role of making all relevant national information available in the ABS Clearinghouse in facilitating compliance by users of genetic resources, and urge parties who have not published or updated such information in the ABS Clearinghouse to do so. The ABS Clearinghouse is and should be understood as such by all parties, the main instrument to support the fulfillment of compliance obligations under the protocol. The EU and its member states support the recommendations of the Compliance Committee as reflected in the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. We'll now hear from the United Kingdom, followed by Argentina, then Japan. The UK, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The UK welcomes the report of the Compliance Committee, and we thank them for their work over the intersessional period. We note with enthusiasm the high percentage of parties that have submitted their interim national reports, and thank those parties that have made the required information on national measures available on the ABS Clearinghouse. However, despite the progress made, it remains challenging for users of genetic resources to obtain legal certainty when accessing genetic resources from some parties to the protocol. Without such certainty, they are unable to conduct research and development activities or share any benefits that they may have arisen. We often receive feedback from UK stakeholders on this difficulty. We therefore request parties who have not yet made available information on their national ABS measures through the ABS Clearinghouse to do so as soon as possible. We are content with the draft decision. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. We'll now hear from Argentina, followed by Japan. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Implementation and compliance with the Nagoya Protocol is essential to turn the objective of fair and equitable sharing of the benefits derived from the use of genetic resources into reality. On this agenda item, my country wishes to highlight that since the last COP meeting, we have updated our national regulations to implement the protocol through the adoption of Resolution 410 2019 from the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. This has enabled us to advance in the implementation of the protocol, including through the issuance of access permits and the publication of internationally recognized certificates of compliance in the protocol's clearinghouse. Argentina is satisfied with the Compliance Committee report. In particular, we wish to highlight the conclusion reached by the committee, where it pointed out that capacity building and resource mobilization are key elements for promoting compliance with the Nagoya Protocol, and that it is important to give these elements adequate consideration in the post-2020 GBF. We believe that this cooperation should include scientific and technical cooperation and technology transfer to developing countries in line with Articles 22 and 23 of the Protocol. My delegation has minor changes to the draft decision in keeping with an intervention that we have submitted in writing. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Argentina. We'll now hear from Japan, followed by Côte d'Ivoire. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan is grateful for the work conducted by the Executive Secretary and has a great regard for the effort made by a lot of relevant organizations in the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. It is significant that the preparation of necessary measures for the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol, especially making the relevant national information available on the ABS Clearinghouse as soon as possible, which becomes the basis of the compliance and awareness raising. In this regard, we support the elements of a draft decision produced from the report of the Compliance Committee. Finally, we would like to comment on the designation of competent national authority. We recognize that if the party to the Nagoya Protocol decides not to prepare an ABS registration as a country of origin of genetic resources, Article 13.2 of the protocol is not applicable in the party, which means CNA does not necessarily need to be designated, as we mentioned in the session of item 10 as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Japan. We'll now hear from Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Switzerland. Côte d'Ivoire, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Côte d'Ivoire welcomes the draft decision and takes note of its contents. However, we would like to make the following comments. The parties need more financing for the adoption and implementation of the ABS measures. So there needs to be dedicated funding for the implementation of the ABS protocol. Thus, the Côte d'Ivoire wants the parties to take this opportunity of the implementation of the post-2020 GBF to reinforce the implementation of this protocol. Moreover, there's the question of capacity building and development is essential when it comes to implementing the protocol at a national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. We'll now hear from Switzerland. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Switzerland would like to thank the Compliance Committee for its report and reiterates its full support for the important work of this body. As presented in its report, the committee has during its third meeting considered some important substantive matters, including the format of national reports and the number of general issues of compliance. Furthermore, we would like to join the Compliance Committee in its demand towards parties that have not yet done so to adopt and implement their ABS legislative, administrative or policy measures and institutional arrangements to make the information available to the Access and Benefit Sharing Clearinghouse, as well as to submit their national report. Switzerland thus welcomes the recommendations of the committee and supports their adoption by the COP-MOP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. We'll now hear from Uruguay, followed by the Republic of Korea. Uruguay, you have the floor.
Thank you. Uruguay also thanks the committee for the work. Our country has developed a complete ABS legal framework in order to comply with its obligations under the protocol, establishing clear procedures for access to genetic resources and the sharing of the benefits arise from their utilization. Also, our country established checkpoints and communicated all relevant information to the ABS clearinghouse. Nevertheless, we would like to emphasize the need for further capacity building and resource mobilization to accelerate the operationalization of the protocol, since it is of the utmost importance in order to move forward with the compliance for developing countries that were able to develop national legal framework regarding the Nagoya Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you, Uruguay. We'll now hear from the Republic of Korea, followed by Dominican Republic and then Kenya. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Korea also would like to appreciate the work of Compliance Committee, and Korea also shares the views on the necessity of uploading ABS measures in the ABS clearinghouse according to Article 6, 14, 15, 16, 17 of Nagoya Protocol, so that the users of genetic resources or associated transition knowledge could be provided with a legal certainty with regard to the results arising from the realization of genetic resources or use of TK associated with genetic resources. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. We'll now hear from Dominican Republic, followed by Kenya and then South Africa. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of the Dominican Republic would like to thank you for this compliance report. Our country has been making great progress with its implementation efforts of the Nagoya Protocol. And we've been drawing up measures for the legislative framework, which has put us in a stronger position so that we can have a better and effective implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. We consider that it's extremely important to continue with capacity building, and this should be on a permanent and continuous footing. There needs to be financial resources dedicated to this. That's essential for developing countries. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. We'll now hear from Kenya, followed by South Africa. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenya welcomes the recommendation by the Compliance Committee and recognizes the significant role of the committee in effective implementation of Nagoya Protocol and realization of its objectives. Kenya has taken steps to review its legal instruments to align with the provisions of its constitution and Nagoya Protocol. The instruments are fostered to create clarity and transparency in access and benefit sharing. Given the establishment of the Compliance Committee, Kenya proposes an additional that there could be need to undertake a study to evaluate the effectiveness of the Compliance Committee in line with its obligation, evaluate cases of non-compliance, and propose measures for effective compliance. In addition, Kenya appreciates the role of post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework in strengthening the implementation of the protocol through Call C and Target 13. Then, Kenya appreciates the inclusion of IPLCs as observers in the committee. The interest of the IPLCs, who are the custodians of the traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources, must be protected and adequately compensated. Lastly, Kenya calls for more allocation of funds under the GF for undertaking assessment and monitoring on progress of implementation of Nagoya Protocol and related targets under the post-2020 GPF. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. We'll now hear from South Africa. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa supports the report of the Compliance Committee and further welcomes with appreciation the progress made by parties in the implementation of the protocol. South Africa concurs with the Compliance Committee's recommendation that the Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to Nagoya Protocol, that there is still a need for further capacity building and resource mobilization to accelerate the operationalization of the protocol. In conclusion, South Africa supports that the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework presents an opportunity to strengthen efforts by parties to implement their obligation under the Nagoya Protocol effectively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. I see no more requests for the floor. I see two more requests for the floor. So India, followed by Chad. Would you please give the floor to India, please? India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India appreciates the efforts of the Compliance Committee to come up with this report under the Nagoya Protocol. We would like to inform you that consequent to the Nagoya Protocol, India notified an exclusive access and benefit sharing regulations in 2014 to provide transparency and legal clarity on fair and equitable sharing of benefits that accrue out of the use of biological resources and associated traditional knowledge. India has till date issued more than about 4,000 IRCCs to various users who have complied with the ABS regulations under the Nagoya Protocol. India remains committed to the full implementation of the Nagoya Protocol, and we look forward for better implementation of the Nagoya Protocol in the days ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. We'll now hear from Chad. Chad, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chad thanks China and Canada for the organization of this important event, and we commend the report of the Compliance Committee. The Republic of Chad believes that the issues relating to the Nagoya Protocol remain an important subject under the global biodiversity agenda. Chad also is of the view that the mobilization of resources and for the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol are more important than ever. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chad. I see no more requests for the floor. Uganda, you pressed the button. Do you wish to have the floor? Yes? Please give the floor to Uganda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Uganda wishes to associate ourselves with the compliance report and wishes to acknowledge that the information that contained therein is useful for the country. We support the views of the compliance measures and wish to report that Uganda is currently involved in developing a system of checkpoints, and we think these are very important and will contribute to the success of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. I see no more requests for the floor. I see that we have a lot of common understanding on the draft decision. As such, I will prepare a conference room paper with the help of the Secretariat. Thank you. We will now move to item 11 of the Nagoya Protocol, MOP, cooperation with other international organizations, conventions, and initiatives. First, I would like to invite the Secretariat to introduce the item. Secretariat, when you're ready, you may take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Document CBD/NP/MOP/4/8 addresses cooperation with other conventions, international organizations, and initiatives in the context of the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. Section 2 of the document addresses key developments on ABS under other intergovernmental fora, while Section 3 provides information on cooperative activities undertaken by the Secretariat with other organizations in the intersessional period to support ratification, to raise awareness, and to build capacity for implementation. The information on developments in other processes is complemented by document CBD/NP/MOP/4/INF/4, which provides additional details on, in particular, the Intergovernmental Conference on an International Legally Binding Instrument under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, as well as on different processes under the World Health Organization. As noted in the conclusions to the main working document for this item, cooperation with a range of organizations is important in light of the cross-cutting nature of the protocol. The Secretariat's mandate includes cooperation with other organizations, and we will continue to implement this mandate moving forward. Accordingly, the meeting may wish to consider the information in the document and note it in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. As you can see, colleagues, no decision is foreseen for this item. The Secretariat has a standing mandate to cooperate with other relevant organizations and will continue to do so in the next intersessional period. So no further guidance from the parties is needed in this regard. I therefore suggest we note the information provided in document CBD/NP/MOP/4/8 in the report of the meeting. I would nonetheless like to open the floor for interventions, particularly for any organizations that may wish to speak briefly on relevant cooperative activities that they have undertaken in support of the Nagoya Protocol. I open the floor to interventions. I see no requests for the floor. I understand we are all agreed on noting the information in the report of the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. And we make sure that this is reflected in the draft report we will consider later on. Our next item is item 15 of the Nagoya Protocol, MOP, Specialized International Access and Benefit Sharing Instruments. Article 4, Paragraph 4 of the Nagoya Protocol. The potential or indicative criteria for specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4, Paragraph 4 of the Nagoya Protocol were considered previously by the MOP at its third meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh. MOP 3 had then decided to reconsider these criteria at its fourth meeting. A draft decision for this item was prepared by SBI at its third meeting and is also reproduced in the compilation of draft decisions. As you can see, the draft decision contains a number of square brackets. Considering the deliberations already held on this item at SBI 3, I propose to carry out informal consultations with those parties who expressed strong views during SBI 3 and to come back with you with a compromise text proposal as a conference room paper to be considered. Thank you. Okay. I see one request for the floor. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just would like to confirm, because we have some comments on this draft decision. So, and we have some comments, we have some statements. Can we say it now or later? I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear.
Thank you, Japan. Yes, just give us a bit of time, but we will open the floor to others, and then we'll see if we're taking this. Hold a second. Let's just hear what Brazil has to say.
Which aims at ensuring food security through the conservation and sustainable use of genetic resources for food and agriculture, meets the indicative criteria set out in the Annex to document CBD-SBI Rec 3/16. Therefore, in order to ensure differentiated treatment for genetic resources for food and agriculture, the ITP-GRFA should be considered as a specialized ABS instrument in the context of Article 4, Paragraph 4 of the Nagoya Protocol. In that connection, in Paragraph 4C, we would appreciate the inclusion of "as appropriate" when we speak about prior informed consent. As prior and informed consent for access to traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources is not provided for in the ITP-GRFA, and therefore it would be important to keep the term "as appropriate" in the text. The text would read like this: legal certainty with respect to access to genetic resources or traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources, including as appropriate the application of prior informed consent, etc., etc. We'll send this in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Could we hear from Japan, please? Thank you, Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan thinks the identification of a specialized international ABS instrument should be left to the judgment of each state. In light of other international instruments, we need careful consideration is needed and more discussion is needed. We have some deletion and addition to this draft decision, so we will provide them in writing to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Can you give me 1 minute to consult? Thank you. Thank you. So As we've indicated, we will do informal consultations, and then we'll produce a CRP. Is that acceptable? I see we have requests for the floor from European Union and the UK. The European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, for us, your way forward is definitely acceptable, but we would also like to take the opportunity to say that, first of all, the views of the European Union and its member states on these agenda items remains the same as expressed in previous meetings, in particular the subsidiary bodies of the subsidiary body on the implementation. So those views are expressed then, are still valid, and we just want to flag that we also have some suggestions for amendments of the draft decisions. We appreciate the work done by the Secretariat in preparing this text, but we also think that actually Article 4.4 of the protocol concerning specialized instruments cannot be considered in isolation, and all paragraphs of Article 4 should inform the interpretation and discussions concerning what constitute a specialized international LBS instruments. We do not see this as well reflected now in the current text, so our basically our comments we will base on this. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. We'll now hear from the UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For us as well, the process going forward that you propose is acceptable, and we would very much welcome to be involved in those informal consultations. If I may, I would just like to make one comment, and that is for the UK, it's important that any criteria adopted remains flexible and responsive and agile. And if this is to be retained in the current draft decision, then we would be broadly supportive. But we look forward to the discussions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. I see we also have a request from the floor from Switzerland and Namibia. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we also agree with the proposed way forward, as you suggested, but I also wanted to highlight a few points that are very important for us. So we are also of the view that the decision to recognize a specialized international instrument under Article 4, Paragraph 4 can be taken by each party or a group of parties by themselves within their sovereign rights. And therefore, we do not support the proposed way forward to formally recognizing international specialized access and benefit sharing instruments through the COP-MOP of Nagoya Protocol as specified in paragraphs 5 and 6 of the draft decision. Nevertheless, we are of the view that coordination and cooperation among different fora and instruments is important to ensure consistency, harmony, and mutual supportiveness among different instruments. And in this regard, we also take note of these indicative criteria, which shall serve as a general non-prescriptive guideline for parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. We'll hear from Namibia, followed by Republic of Korea. Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would also like to be involved in the consultation. We agree with your proposed way forward. For us, it's really important to retain paragraphs 5 and 6. We understand the Nagoya Protocol to be a legally binding instrument, and by ratifying it, parties have undertaken basically not to undermine the implementation of the benefit sharing provisions in the instrument, and therefore we believe it's proper that the meeting of the parties to the Nagoya Protocol get to decide whether a new instrument meets the criteria or not. Regarding the criteria, we also have some strong feelings that it must be an intergovernmentally agreed, legally binding instrument that meets more or less the same set of, or enshrines the same set of norms that the Nagoya Protocol does. So we would like to be consulted on that. We will send in some text to the Secretary as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Namibia. We'll hear now from Republic of Korea, then Norway. Republic of Korea, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Korea also supports the process made by Madam Chair, and Korea will be happy to join the informal consultation too. And especially Korea, with regard to the specialized international instrument, Korea would like to recall the Article 4.2, which reads that nothing in this protocol shall prevent the parties from developing and implementing other relevant international agreements, including other specialized access and benefit sharing agreements. Korea believes that this formulation, this wording and formulation is the strictest and strictest one. So Korea would like to recall this expression, which indicates that every party has a sovereign right to develop and implement specialized international instruments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will now hear from Norway, followed by Mexico. Norway, you have the chair. The floor.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Norway commends the work done by the subsidiary body of implementation in preparing a recommendation and a draft. We would like to take part in the informal consultations as we have some specific text proposals which will be submitted in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I see Mexico, followed by China. Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you. We would very much like to participate in the informal meetings. We have specific concerns. We don't want a fragmentation of the spirit of the Nagoya Protocol across various instruments, so we believe that it is necessary to make certain adjustments, but certainly we want to express our concerns in the informal meeting on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. We'll now hear from China. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China supports the process suggested by you. We are happy to join in the informal consultations. Thank you.
Thank you, China. Give me 1 minute to consult. I'll be back shortly. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. since so many want to be consulted informally, we thought maybe we should have a small Friends of the Chair facilitated by one of the friends. The parties would be Japan, Brazil, EU, UK, Switzerland, Namibia, Republic of Korea, Norway, Mexico, China. And we would have one of the friends be the facilitator, and we would let you know via the screens when this would be. Is this an acceptable way of moving along? I see no objections. So thank you for that. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. We will do our very best to make sure that it does not clash with DSI. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. We will now move to the next item. That is item 16 of the Nagoya Protocol MOP, the Global Multilateral Benefit Sharing Mechanism. The draft decision for this item was prepared by the subsidiary body on implementation at its third meeting and is also reproduced in the compilation of draft decisions in document MOP 4/1/add5. As you can see, the draft decision contains a large number of square brackets. It is my understanding that this item is linked to other items being considered during our meetings. I thus propose we return to this item later in the meeting once related deliberations have had a chance to advance. Is this an acceptable way of proceeding? I see no objections. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we have now completed the first consideration of the items under our agenda for Working Group 2. As mentioned this morning, there will be a contact group on synthetic biology at 4 p.m. today and a Friends of the Chair on climate change at the same time. This evening at 7:30 p.m., there will be a contact group on marine and coastal biodiversity and one on agriculture. Can we refer to the online schedule for the room numbers? Tomorrow, we'll start the review of the CRP. Secretariat, are there any announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder to delegations that made statements during this session on the first reading items that you have 1 hour after this session to submit your text proposals. We're still waiting for some text proposals from some of the items that were discussed yesterday, and you will see some of the text might not be in the CRPs. So we urge delegations to please send their text proposals within 1 hour of the closing of this session. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.